What's up and welcome to Idle Insights, a show where each week I, Treavor Bettis, talk to interesting people about idle champions and Dungeons and Dragons. And joining me this week is Makenzie De Armas. Hello!
Hello! Hi, hello! I'm so happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you here. And this is the second time that we've gotten to talk, and we talked about
Yeah.
psychology last time on Champions of
Yep.
Psych. Now we're talking about D&D on Idle Insights.
Ah.
If folks in the chat don't know who are you for those fine folks who do not know?
I am Makenzie De Armas. I am one of the game designers for Dungeons and Dragons over at Wizards of the Coast. Long story short, if you open up a D&D book that's been published in the last couple of years, I've probably written some of the words in there, and I've at the very least edited and reviewed some as well.
Heck yeah, if you've been enjoying D&D at the table, you thank her for it.
I make words, I make monsters, I make the math go correct.
There's plenty of people out there that appreciate you for that. Though I think there are probably some players like, could you skew it a little more in our favor? Yeah, we're here today to have some fun talking about D&D, specifically the book of many things that recently came out.
Yeah.
But Makenzie, before we do that, I like to do a little icebreaker question just for fun. How did you get into D&D?
I'm trying to think. So I'm fairly new to D&D compared to a lot of folks on the D&D design team, and also just a lot of folks in general. I got into D&D. Like the first game of D&D I played was a really kind of janky introductory session in like the summer of 2016.
Okay.
No, 2015. And then I didn't really touch it again until I hit university. Basically, like I grew up loving like Tolkien. I loved fantasy. I loved reading that sort of thing. I loved dragons. I loved escapism. I loved fantasy. I loved magic. And that was just my bread and butter. But I wasn't really around people who played D&D or even really knew what it was until like that one summer where I got introduced to the game and I thought it was super cool. And then after that, I got to hit college, tried joining my school's D&D club, and they were like, sorry, we have a campaign. We're not inviting any more players. The spots are full. No. But my partner who at the time went to a different school. He got into his D&D club. And so he was telling me all about his exploits, and he wanted me to be able to understand what was happening. So he recommended that I check out this show called Critical Role. And so I watched it, and I started watching it to understand what he was talking about. And then I kept watching it. And then I started watching ahead of where he was because he was taking too long.
Hey, I think that's fair.
Yep. And so I just kind of kept watching, and that led me to meet like a whole bunch of awesome people, and I started being able to meet folks online and play D&D virtually with folks who like also liked Critical Role. I got to meet some really amazing alumni from my college who did stuff in the TTRPG space. And we talked, we played games together, and they kind of from there kind of helped get me or at least get on my radar the fact that D&D writing and creation was a thing that I could do. And so I tried it out, and then my brain just really clicked into the way that D&D functions and the way that it combined like number crunching and math with fun narrative fiction elements, and it just kind of my life exploded from there in the best way possible.
If I remember correctly, you did start like making stuff to like put out online. Correct? Yeah, because I think that's how I started following you on Twitter. Is that I saw people retweeting your content and stuff like that.
Yeah, I started making like my D&D, my first D&D stuff that I made was like stuff on DM's Guild that I just kind of made for funsies. And then I took one of the storytelling collective how to write an adventure monthly workshop things, and it wasn't my first adventure, but it was certainly the better adventure I made. And then from there I kind of just really enjoyed it, so I just kind of kept making stuff. And I just kept putting stuff online. Turns out people liked it. And then I was able to apply for freelancing gigs with bigger companies, and then it just kind of spiraled into the beautiful mess that is my life right now.
Well, I mean that kind of goes right into my next question was like, how did you get your start at WotC?
Yeah.
And yeah, so you built your experience and then got freelancing experience from that.
Yeah. I basically started out as a freelancer, a TTRPG freelancer. I did D&D stuff, though I did do a couple of like one-page TTRPGs that I had a lot of fun with. I do still very much love, and it's still out. I did design a one-page TTRPG about being pigeon detectives, which I designed and I'm very proud of because one of the stats you can roll is poop.
Well, that might be my favorite thing that's been said on this show with
great.
me.
I am so proud of that game because I was gonna make a game about pigeons and I was like, well, if I make a game about pigeons, they have to have the ability to be pigeons and leave bird poop everywhere. And so I've made a whole bunch of stats and all of them began with P because pigeons. And the last stat in the lineup is poop, and it was great. And I made that for a school assignment, and I turned that
in. That is incredible. I love everything about that story.
So anyways, in that chaotic time, I did a lot of like fun, weird, kind of kooky stuff like that. And I started out doing freelance stuff, and then through a bunch of networking and meeting folks at cons and other meeting folks online because I put a lot of work into like I was doing a lot of stream stuff at the time, so I was also doing a lot of like social media promotion work and all that jazz. And so from there I applied to do freelancing for like folks like Matt Colville. I was a lead writer for Islands of Sina Una. I did a bunch of I got to work with D&D Beyond back when they were with Fandom, and got to write some encounters of the week. And from there, I kind of built up a portfolio. So that way, when a job posting opened up at Wizards of the Coast for an associate game designer, I was able to apply. And that was just basically your standard. I got the job through a standard, like, hey, they posted a job opening and I applied process. And then I started out as an associate game designer, and then I got promoted up to full staff, and now we're here.
Heck yeah.
Yeah. It's one of those things where the story of how I got the job is actually like really unexciting because it's like they posted a job and I applied to it and then I interviewed.
I mean, sure, but like, you know, you put in the work in like the best way possible in order to be able to confidently apply for that job and
I don't know if I have confidently applied. I did apply.
Okay, I understand that on a fundamental level. I really do.
I applied with middling to lesser than probably I should have had confidence. I was surprised and grateful when they offered me the job.
Oh, that's awesome. I do want to say real quick for chat, I did put a pin post in there, but we are live today, so if you have any questions for Makenzie, you can put them into the chat, and our awesome mod Gabe will grab them. Put a little text doc that we'll go to at the end of the episode. But yeah, so we're working at WotC. What projects have you said you can open a book in the last few years, but like, is that legitimately every one of those books?
Almost everyone, not quite. I've especially recently I've kind of gotten my fingerprints are kind of on all the books. The way that we work in studio is very super collaborative, so even if like one person is like the main writer for a chapter of a book, it will typically have almost everyone in the studio will have read it, reviewed it, edited it, tweaked it, all that sorts of things. My very first project that I ever worked on was Strixhaven, A Curriculum of Chaos.
Hey!
Which is a super fun project to work on. I joked because I had literally just graduated out of college, so I was like, I'm out of college, and they're putting me back in college!
That's fantastic.
So I had a lot of fresh college experiences in my brain to put into Strixhaven, which is super fun. I've worked on Glory of the Giants. I did playtesting for like Spelljammer. I did Book of Many Things, which is what we're talking about today. I worked on Eve of Ruin, which is out for pre-order.
Yeah.
The new Dragons of Starmark Isle starter set I also had my hands on. I
That's
worked a little
awesome.
bit on journeys through the Radiant Citadel, Keys to the Golden Vault. It has one of the adventures in that anthology is mine, and lots of the monsters that were created in Journey Through the Radiant Citadel were some of my design that got workshopped and such. And I
I,
think I'm
I
trying to think because oh yeah, I think also let's see, there's
oh
Fandelver and
yeah.
Below. I worked on. I had the pleasure of getting to work on the bestiary for that. So there's a lot of really funky little monsters in that one that I loved. That they really did go, "Hey Mackenzie, can you make us a cosmic horror bestiary?" And I went, "Are you sure?" And they were like, "Yeah." And I went, "Okay,
You
here's
really
a
knocked out of
flesh
the park on that
wall.
one. Oh God, yeah.
Here's your flesh wall. Have fun. Goodbye. Here's your flesh wall. Here's your stat block that looks like a brain with the action spew progeny. Have fun. Have a good time. My work here is done. Um I'm trying, yeah. So the thing is I actually like I have this is the thing I do to curb my dice obsession. For every project that I like work on or publish or that gets released and is published, I get a set of dice to commemorate it. So
Oh.
that comprises my set of DM dice. So it has like campaign arcs that I finished as well as or that I've DM'd and finished, as well as projects that I've released have been I've worked on and that have been released. I commemorate them and put them in a big
That's
ol'
so
hunk of dice
cool.
set.
I
So I'm
love
like
that.
I'm trying to remember all the things, but I try to remember like what sets of dice do I have? Which set of dice did I get for this one? Um
That's
and
great.
yeah, oh, it's so much fun. It's so much fun trying to find the dice that like really fits the vibe
Yeah.
of the project. And I typically will just like whenever I'm at a con, I'll just go look around at all the dice and try and find the one that I see. And more often than not, I'll look at it and my brain will immediately go, "That's the one. That's for that
Mm-hmm.
book."
Mm-hmm.
Which has been so much fun. Yeah. It also just means it's like it's a fun little like button to put on the
Yeah.
when a project is out. I get to be like, I'm gonna get this to commemorate that this was done
It's a little
and
celebration.
little
That's great.
celebration. And also it's just like, hey, it means I can get pretty dice, but like have a reason for getting them and not feel
Yeah.
like I'm just tempted by all the dice all the time.
I know that temptation well. I
Yeah.
don't usually call things in the chat while we're doing an episode, but TTRP gifts in the chat when you're talking about Strixhaven said, "Thanks for the owlin, by the way."
Birds! Birds! Oh yeah, the Allen is fun.
It's good stuff. I think even our producer Lauren played one of those at one point in a one shot. So why don't you tell me about Book of Many Things? Or sorry, yeah,
Yay.
Book of Many Things. That's the one.
Yep.
Yeah.
The Book of Many Things, which comes with the Deck of Many Things box set, which is aptly named after
I
the
have that
Deck of
right
Many
here.
Things. Oh, it's so pretty. I love it. I love it so much. It's such a
Don't
gorgeous
blur the
project.
artwork. There we go. It's so cool.
It's so cool. It's so much fun. I like this book because it's a fun little oddball of a book. Because it has instead of having like discrete, like big chunky chapters. It has 22 smaller chapters, and
Hmm.
each chapter is themed to one of the original cards of the Deck of Many Things, which I just find so much fun because I love the Deck of Many Things as a concept and as an item. I just think it's so much fun. The book itself provides you all the tools you need to run instances in which the deck might be pulled, or as the consequences of the deck. For example, if your players pull the Donjon card and get spirited away to the Donjon, we give you the Donjon in a way, and like we give you that as an adventure location that you can play through and get. If your characters pull the Void, we give you a dungeon in what might be the Void location, so that way you can send your players on a quest to retrieve that soul. We also give you guidance on how to play a character who's lost their soul in case that player doesn't want to like entirely trash their character sheet. If you pull like the, I think it's the, I think it's the throne where you get the keep
Oh
of,
yeah.
yeah. It's been a hot second since I've looked at the deck, so I might be incorrect, but I believe it's a throne.
Pretty sure you're right.
You get a keep, but you got to clear it out full of monsters. And instead of having to design a whole keep, we give you one that's also
That
chock full
is
of monsters. So you can just chuck that at your players and go like, "All right, here you go. Clean that out. There you go. You got your thing." We also give you guidance for some of the more mundane cards where it's like, here's the gem card. This might screw up your whole campaign if you have a money-oriented party. So here's how to maybe like either have different incentives, how to make the money appear like less like spontaneously, or provide other challenges that involve around like that wealth of gold kind of appearing. Um, we also have a bunch of fun magic items that can be used for many of the cards that do pull magic items, like the key. Um, it's such a fun grab bag of a book.
Yeah.
I really like it because it's one of those things where like you can just sort of grab a chapter and use it, and you don't really need anything else in the rest of the book. Um, or you can just use the whole book as itself as like a bunch of fuel for DMs to build whole campaigns or even just one shots. And it's just there's so much good stuff in there, and it's presented in such a concise and just sort of pick and grab and go way that it's just I can't wait to see what people do with it.
I remember this book getting announced in one of the D&D directs, and I was like, oh, well, I love the deck of many things. But I'm like, how do you do like a whole book with that? And when I finally got it and I started looking through it, it was one of those things that I'm like, wow, I never actually thought about like how much help I do actually need when it comes to a card being pulled from there, because there's so many things that it's just like this adventure now goes this way for a bit, and
or it's like, and congratulations, a fiend is now your enemy. DM on the DM side behind the screen, I guess I'm pulling in a fiend now and I don't know what to do.
Well, one of them specifically, because last year I ran a stream game. I was telling you this before we went live, that they pulled from the deck, and an NPC got the Void card, and Soul got lifted off to somewhere else, and all the players were like, hey, we want to do another game at some point where we go get him, and I was like, I don't know what that place would look like, and now I do.
And it's one of those things where it's like just like every other like D&D like module and stuff, it's like super mutable. So it's like, if you don't like certain elements of this dungeon, you can just change it around and mix and match it, which is super fun. I think like my favorite thing about working on D&D and designing stuff for D&D is the idea of like a modular story where I design bits and pieces that people can and will take apart and repurpose for their own games. And designing things like knowing that what I'm going to create is going to be changed and shifted around and made maybe not better or worse, but made more perfect for the thing that it's getting slotted into. That's my favorite thing. I love the idea of knowing that I'm making building blocks for folks that they can then use to customize and tailor and make their own fun with. And this book is like the epitome of that, because it's all just little building blocks that you can take at piecemeal and patch together. And it's so exciting. And I just like, anytime I hear about what folks are doing with the book, it just makes me so happy, because I'm like, you're doing what I want to do. You're taking it apart. Yay!
Yeah. Well, honestly, this book is what like my kind of ideal supplement for D&D would be, where it's something where it's like, I may not necessarily need the entire book, but there's going to be a point at some time in a campaign where I really need one part of this book, and it is going to help me out in ways that just pays for itself.
Oh yeah. And I think the other fun thing is that, like, even if you're like staunchly against the deck of many things, you can still use the book, because the book has a lot of things that like that don't rely on the deck to use. Like we have a whole like zodiac system that's inspired by the deck, but you don't even have to touch the deck if you don't want to. We've got like I said, magic items, monsters, all that stuff that you don't have to use the deck for to plop into your games.
Well, I mean, you can have an NPC who drew from the deck, and now they have a problem that they need your help solving. So you don't even have to have the players pull the deck, because that is pure and utter chaos. But I love that kind of chaos.
Yeah, I love that chaos. That chaos is fun. It's one of those things where it's like I was in a campaign where the deck was we had the deck, and I was sitting there, and Chaos Gremlin me is like, I want to pull the deck. But my character is like from the Feywild. So they implicitly understand things have consequences. And they're like this Feywild noble, like adopted daughter of an archfey, understands like lawful because they grew up in the Feywild, so lawful in the sense that they know the written like rule of the law and know how to like kind of subvert it occasionally, but they're very a stickler for the rules because they grew up in the Feywild. So they're like, we're not touching that deck. And I'm sitting here just vibrating and suffering. I'm like, I wish my character would do the chaos. But nah, she didn't. She just sat there and watched as other people do the deck, and then just has to deal with the chaos that appears after that.
I know that pain very well, playing a character that is very much not like me, and I'm just like, I have a really good thing that I want to do here, but I can't. I am just gonna.
Yep. I love her so much. She's my first. I think I originally tried to make her chaotic good because I was like, oh, she knows the rules, but she subverts them. And then the more I played her, I went, no. She's lawful good. She's lawful good in the silliest way possible.
That's funny because I had the opposite of that recently, where I started off as lawful good, and then as I was playing her, I'm just like, no, she's chaotic good. This woman is full chaos.
Yeah. It's just like it's one of those things where it's like it's lawful. There's a good like internet post somewhere. It was like, my alignment is lawful chaotic. I have a moral compass, but no one knows which way it's pointing.
I like that.
And it's kind of like that, but it's like, yeah, my character's lawful good. There's a strict like letter of the law that she's sticking to. Does anyone know what it is? No. Does she know what it is? Not really. Just say nonsense, but she's sticking to it.
You know, there is a heading.
Oh yeah.
It's just, you know, they might know what
there
it is.
There is some semblance of magnetic north. We don't know what it is, but it is there. It exists. There. It is pointing her in that direction.
So what specifically in Book of Many Things did you work on? Where's your fingerprint on that one?
Oh, my fingerprints are all over that book. Yeah, no, my grubby little fingerprints are all over that book. Yeah, no, that was a wonderful, wonderful labor of love, and it's all my thing. Almost everything in that book, in one way or another, like I had like helped like shepherd in some way, shape, or form. The main things I worked on though, were I did the magic items. And then I did a couple of the not adventure chapters, but the ones that give you like adventure hook chapters. So like the ones where you like, here's an organization. I worked on one of the organization chapters where here's the organization, here's some plot hooks to get you like hooked into the organization, here's some stat blocks. I worked on a couple of those. The Skull, which is the Grim Harrow chapter, and the Uriel chapter, which talks about Atheria and Uriel. And then I also did the feats and spells, and assorted, I believe the assorted stuff in the Sage chapter. The fun thing about working on these books is that they come out about a year after you actually work on them.
Yeah.
So it's like I'm trying to remember, like, what did I do? It's been a hot minute.
I have that trouble just with like like 3 or 4 months where between like me writing an adventure for Idle Champions and it coming out, and someone's like, "Oh, Trevor, I loved this thing," and I'm like, "What did I do?"
Oh, that happens all the time. That happens so much, and like especially in games that like I'll be playing in, and the DM will pull an item that I like either designed or a monster I made, and I'm just sitting there, and it's like, it can do that. Oh yeah, no, I made it do that. I let it do that. That was me. That's on me. I'm sorry. That's my bad. My bad. Sorry, folks. That's on me.
I was literally playing one of my adventures the other day, and I'm like, man, this area is really annoying. I've got no one else to blame but myself on that one.
Oh, that happens all the time in the funniest way. And also, it's real funny because sometimes I'll mention, oh yeah, no, I made that monster, and the entire D&D party will look at me and go, Makenzie, why? What have you done? Or like we're in the middle of combat and we're suffering, and I'm like, yeah, this is a really good monster. And the rest of the party is like, yeah, is it Makenzie? Are you sure? As like we're just the cleric's just rapidly healing.
Character's laying there with 1 hit point. Yeah, 10 out of 10 combat. This is great.
Mackenzie's still like having fun, vibing. Everyone else like, you did this. You made this.
I I've had that experience not even as a designer because like a creature will show up that I'm like, oh, I just really love this creature. I was in a stream game and an elder brain dragon showed up, and my first thought was, how do I set up the DM doing the breath weapon, because it's disgusting and awesome and I love it.
I love the idea of like, I'm just gonna shuffle my character into like a nice cone shape.
Yeah. Oh no,
nice
I'm over
line.
here.
Oh no, I'm right behind this PC. Oh no. Whatever will we do? What would happen if it like we're in a really nice just area of effect shape? Darn.
Oh.
Wild how that happens. Yeah. I'm trying to, yeah. But anyways, things I worked on in Book of Many Things. I did a lot of the magic items. The magic items are super. I got to do magic items that are all kind of inspired by. The 22 magic items, each inspired by one of the decks, the original cards of Deck of Many Things.
Oh, you go ahead. I'm not gonna start looking at this.
Oh yeah, no, they were super fun to make. Like taking inspiration from both like the card iconography as well as what the card actually does. So I think my favorite example is the Warrior's Pass Key, which is based off the key card. Because the item, it not only can transform into a magic weapon, which is in line with what the key card actually does, but because it is the iconography of the card is a key, it also lets you cast knock. So it kind of hits that dual, both what the card does and what the card is duality, which is super fun. Another one of my favorite ones is the Jester's Mask, which actually lets you once a day turn a natural 1 into a natural 20.
Oh. I have plenty of characters that could use that card.
Yeah, it's fun because I love the idea of a jester like turning things on its head.
Yeah,
and so that idea of, oh, I rolled a 1, I'm just gonna use the power to make it a natural 20.
Jester's Mask. Yeah,
yep.
That's
so those ones
cool.
are super fun to make. Yeah, I certainly helped with like shepherding and polishing up some of the other magic items in that book, but for the ones that like I wrote the original drafts of would be like these 22. I did a little bit of, I got to work on some of the stat blocks as well. There's a bunch of stat blocks kind of peppered all throughout this book that were super fun to make. And so I did like passes of like mechanical passes where other folks will write stat blocks and then I'll go in and just sort of like polish it up, make sure everything functions the way it's supposed to. But the ones that were my original design are the Atheria and Uriel ones, as well as the ones in the Skull chapter, which are some of my favorite stat blocks. Because they get increasingly high CR. So the lowest is CR 15 and then CR 20 to CR 25.
Dang.
And they took a lot of inspiration when I was writing them because the whole kind of theme of the Skull chapter is the idea of like you pull the Skull card and the Avatar of Death shows up.
Yeah.
What happens after? Like what happens to the souls that are killed by death and can't be resurrected? And this kind of creating this organization of undead that are just hunting down the deck because they blame it for them being stuck perpetually in the state of undeath.
Yeah.
And because of that, when I was creating the stat blocks for the leaders of the organization, I decided to take inspiration from the 4 Horsemen of the Apocalypse because you have death. And so I was like, well, you have the Avatar of Death, and that's kind of, we have that one. But what about the leaders of this org? I think it would be really fun if they took inspiration from the other 3 horsemen. So you have one based off pestilence, you have one based off war, and then you have one based off of famine, which I took a little bit more creative liberty off of because at surface level, famine and pestilence mechanically can have a little bit of overlap with the idea of like poison damage. So instead of like famine in terms of like blight, I took it as famine in terms of like emptiness.
Ooh.
So the highest level Grim champion, who is based off the Horseman Famine, is actually like this entity of like desolation and emptiness and hollowness and void. So like they have the ability to just, one of their legendary actions is they can just end all like spells a 5th level or lower on a creature. Just immediately dead.
Jeez.
Like they can just make like dead areas of magic. They can just make these
Dead.
crushing hollow voids. They have their blades deal like cold damage and sap some of the life force away to reinvigorate um the champion itself. And that one was so much fun to deal with because I also got to draw a lot of my own experiences of like what it feels like to me, like when I think of like the emptiness and desolation, I think of a
Yeah.
lot of what I've dealt with when I'm like, I have like really bad bouts of depression, or
Yeah.
like when I have autistic meltdowns or shutdowns and I just fully dissociate. And that idea of like channeling that kind of sense of emptiness and hollowness into a monster that weaponizes that terrible, terrible feeling was
Yeah.
so much fun. And then building mechanics that kind of build on these feelings of despair and emptiness and how to actualize that in a way that is represented by dice and numbers and attacks was super fun.
I love that. That is fantastic. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, that's a great way of getting inspiration for a terrifying creature. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Oh, so much fun. And not to say that the others aren't fun. Like Champion of Bloodshed, which is our war horseman, and Champion of Pestilence, which is our pestilence champion, are both super fun and have some real fun abilities in them. And they're also built, my favorite thing about them is they're built to be mounted combatants as well, so they can some of their legendary actions allow them to just move their mounts without provoking opportunity attacks. So they're really meant to be horsemen.
Yeah.
Uh and yeah, like the Bloodshed one can summon like a vortex of blades that just decimates things. It's so much fun. The and if you're more into more magic inclined things, the Pestilence one is our spellcaster. They have like all these terrible spells that they can cast. It's so much fun. I love them. I love them. I love the champions. They're my babies. They're terrible and terrifying, and I can't wait to find a reason to use them in my games. They're just real high level.
Heck yeah. Real quick, we're gonna be doing a giveaway here in chat in a little bit. Our awesome mod Gabe is gonna put a keyword into chat. Just put that keyword in as it is, and you'll be in for a chance to win 42 chests of your choice, excluding Bahamut chests. And while you do that, Mackenzie, you've mentioned them a couple times here, but can you tell me about the two new
Yes.
characters in this book?
My wonderful, wonderful. I love them so much. I love them so much. But yes, Asteria and Uriel are new characters. Uriel is not entirely new. Uriel has
Okay.
been well, because the reason why we have Uriel is because in the original deck of many things, only one of them has a proper name, and that is the Uriel card.
Oh. Huh.
Yeah.
I never clocked that was
Yep.
yeah, okay.
Out of all the cards in the deck, all of them are named after like objects or symbols, except for the Uriel card, which is a proper name. And so when we were creating the book, we were like, why, when we wanted to make a new kind of origin story for the deck that is resonates with how the deck is presented in 5th edition, we kind of gravitated towards that card and that question of who is Uriel and why does she, of all people, have a specifically named card in the deck? And that's kind of where we started. The other thing that kind of came into mind as we were working on iterating the story was the knowledge that the Medusa symbol, or the Medusa visage, has been very much reclaimed in modern times as a symbol of, for folks who are victims of sexual assault and sexual harassment. And we wanted to honor that and not portray the Medusa as a villain, but portray the Medusa as that same symbol of
Heck yeah.
sisterhood, power, reclamation, defiance, that sort of thing. And so we kind of were workshopping that a bit. And as we were sort of keeping that in mind and using that as our guiding star, we came up with this story of a character, a paladin, who is best friends with this Medusa and risks everything, including rewriting fate itself, to make sure to save her best friend. It is a story of sisterhood and protection and just deep love and community that drives the creation of the deck. And also a defiance of what is supposed to be, that defiance of like what the Medusa is supposed to represent as a monstrosity, but instead that reclamation effort to make it a symbol of protection. And so we want so that we created the story that has that at its core. As we were making that story, I realized as we were writing it, the story resonated a lot with my own autistic experiences of rebelling against what people said I should be and rebelling against the presupposition of what I was and the idea of rewriting fate on my own terms and disregarding what authority figures up to and including what gods might say. And that kind of led me to pitch that the paladin in this story, Asteria, would be autistic.
I love that.
There's also the fun bonus of if you have an autistic character, it works really well if you have a Medusa best friend because you never make eye contact.
I love it. I love it.
It was happy serendipity at that point. I was just like, that's
Makenzie.
funny, and I don't want to make it like I that was like the first thought, and then I was like, no, I don't want to make it a joke. I have to make sure it actually like I don't want her to be autistic just for the bit.
Yeah.
So I was like, I'm gonna think about this, and then the more I thought about it, the more I realized no, there's actually a lot of resonance here with the autistic experience of like defying expectation and going against and rebelling against what people say you are and aren't supposed to be, and that idea of rewriting your story on your own terms. And so that's kind of how Asteria and Uriel came to be. So we have this amazing autistic paladin who was born a princess, but didn't quite fit in and had an overbearing parents that tried to essentially force her to be neurotypical and mask and fit the role that she was supposed to be, that like she's supposed to be like a dutiful princess, blah blah blah. But then fate happens. She ends up meeting Uriel. They train together, and Uriel teaches her how to be a fighter and a warrior. And then when they're found out and Uriel is captured, Asteria does everything she can to rescue Uriel, but it doesn't work until the literal god of fate comes down and goes, yeah, so I hate to break it to you, but like that's how the story breaks down. You are supposed to be the princess. Uriel is a monster. She's the villain for doing things, and that's how things are supposed to be. And Asteria, having learned from like meeting Uriel and understanding that Uriel didn't see her as like supposed to be a princess, or didn't see her as someone who was broken or weird or strange, and didn't force her to like make eye contact or be someone she's not, in the same way that Asteria looked at Uriel and didn't see a monster but just saw a friend. Asteria just challenges the god of fate and goes, no, you're wrong. We changed our story by the way that we chose to look at each other. So we can do it. We've done it before. We can do it again. Let me change this.
Heck yeah.
And that's how the deck of many things gets rewritten, is that Asteria, or the god of fate Istis, pulls down these cards from the sky, like from these constellations, and deals out a new fortune for Asteria. And that's how the Uriel card came to be. And then Asteria is able to rescue Uriel, and they go on and be adventurers until Uriel decides to retire, and then Asteria, who really enjoys being an adventurer, decides to go off on her own, but she carries the symbol of Uriel with her on her shield. And that's essentially her paladin holy symbol is the symbol of her best friend, because that's where she draws her divine power from. It's through
that's incredible
sheer friendship.
I love that. Like that's because I remember it getting announced or before this book came out that like this character was going to be like the first like canon character,
canonically prominently autistic character. We've had like NPCs in adventures that are coded as neurodivergent or neurodiverse, but like getting to actually write her experiences with a very specific autistic lens, and even write like her words and her notes appear throughout the entire book, and I got to write them as an actually autistic person and put a lot of my experience into her notes and stuff. And it's one of those things where we never explicitly say that she's autistic, but that's mostly because I wanted to show, not tell, like her autistic identity.
Yeah.
And so like it is not subtle. It is not subtle. I didn't want it to be subtle.
Good.
I wanted it to be very loudly and proudly autistic.
Yeah.
But without the need for Asteria to justify herself with a label. And it worked out real well.
I love that.
And it's so much fun.
I gotta tell you, because the
Mhm.
announcement about that came out after you and I did Champions of Psych last
Yep.
year, where we had you on talking about being autistic and
Yeah.
everything. And I remember reading that news, and my first thought was, I genuinely hope Makenzie was the one that worked on that.
Mhm.
And so
I was.
I'm so happy that you got to do that.
Yeah,
That's so dang
Asteria
cool.
was I basically helmed her creation. I wrote the first drafts of her story, and I basically was a I wanted to have that as a guiding point, and I was very insistent of like, if we decide to do this, if you decide to go with this pitch, I want to write her notes. I want to be her
Yeah.
voice.
Yeah.
And if not me, then get an actually autistic person to do it
Damn right.
because that's so important. And it's also one of those things where we don't get a lot of like really awesome autistic heroic representation.
Yeah.
Um, because most of the time, at least I find autistic representation either infantilizes the person or it makes them seem like they're some superhero. And I
Yeah.
wanted to make sure that, like, if we did this, it's like, yeah, she's a super awesome, amazing adventurer. She's also autistic. Those two things, they're related in the fact that they're the same person.
Yeah.
And obviously, one experience will inform the other, but her awesomeness and her superpowers are not from her autisticness. It is they just happen to coexist because they can coexist because autistic people can be heroes and they can be awesome and powerful and strong and do a whole bunch of things.
Yeah. The the sort of representation with that, as far as just like um ways characters are portrayed that are, different in ways. What One of them that I always used to point to was like, you remember the show Monk, the Tony
Mm-mm.
Shalhoub. Well, he's a Sherlock Holmes kind of
Ah,
character,
okay.
consulting detective,
Hmm.
and had OCD. And the way that I said it at the I loved the show at the beginning, and I told people I loved it because he was a detective who happened to have OCD. And then in the later seasons, they turned that into a guy who has OCD that happens to be a detective. Like
Hmm.
it was just, oh, wow, we're just gonna make jokes about the fact that he has OCD and is a
Hmm.
germaphobe and everything like that. And oh yeah, he's kind of a detective too. Like that sort of representation where it's like, no, this is a guy, this is a person doing what they do,
Yep.
and they have this. This is a part of them.
Hmm.
I genuinely don't think a lot of people get how important something like
Yeah.
that is. And so I'm so happy
Yep.
that you got to bring that not only to this book but to Dungeons and Dragons as a whole.
Yep.
Uh,
I'm very proud of Asteria. And I can't wait to see what she does and what she becomes, like in the way that everything in D&D and everything we make is meant to be taken by the folks who play our game and made their own. I am so excited to see how folks make it their own. And I've gotten so many like lovely, lovely messages from folks about Asteria and how excited they are to see her and to play with her and incorporate her into their games. And it's one of those things where it's like, I cannot wait for her to take a life of her own in the experiences of so many amazing autistic Dungeons and Dragons players.
Heck yeah. Well, we're getting towards the end of the show here. We got a few questions from chat while we were talking.
Yeah.
So let's see what they've been up to. Cassius335 says, question, been been trying to convert a plate PL8 caster, part bard, over to a CR. What is going on here, Cassius? What are you writing? I feel like you're writing code. Okay. So they're essentially trying to convert a caster that is part
Mhm.
bard over to a CR creature,
Okay.
into an NPC. But the once a day kind of magic ability standard for NPC magic is causing problems. Do you have any
Yeah.
suggestions?
Um, so I think it basically comes down to how much futzing around do you want to do as a DM as you're trying to run this character? Because like the easiest way to do it, honestly, is just like you don't have to use the stat blocks. If you want to just build a character sheet and use that character sheet and run that character sheet as an NPC as a dungeon
Mm-hmm.
master, that's totally valid. You can 100% do that. The only reason why I would like suggest condensing it down into a NPC stat block is either you have to print stuff and you need like to save paper, or it's just easier for you to run and you want to compress down the abilities. In which case, I would recommend finding the like most powerful spells or your favorite spells, or if this is a character that's been a long-standing character in your campaign, like the most iconic spells, and just stripping down its like spellcasting list down to those bare essentials. And maybe like futzing around with making their attacks instead of like in a lot of ways, like people have attacks where it's like, oh, they can do something equal to their proficiency bonus whenever they hit. I think the one I'm thinking of is like the Path of the Beast Barbarian. Every time they hit, they have an ability to do extra psychic damage, but they can only do it a number of times per day. You can reduce the amount of tracking you're doing when you're converting something from a character sheet to a monster stat block. So you can just have that happen every attack. It's fine. Monsters can hit hard.
Yeah. I like that.
But yeah. But I mean, ultimately, if the goal is, and you don't mind running the character like as a full character sheet, that's totally fine. You don't have to make it, you don't have to have everything you run be a stat block in the monster format. It can just sort of be uh it can just be a character sheet you run as an NPC. Now, if you're trying to calculate like CR, experience points equivalents, that gets a little bit more tricky. I'm trying to think of like the best way. I typically do CR is equal to whatever its level is. With the exception of like once you start to get to like really high level stuff, I start to add like maybe 1 or 2 CR levels depending on like how much damage output this thing is doing. But a general rule of thumb is like if the thing can like if you're looking at your character and you're looking at another like a fighter in the party and the character can kill like do enough damage to reduce the if the creature can do enough damage to do reduce this character's hit points down to like 0 in over 3 rounds, I would set their CR to be equal to that character's level, if not 1 or 2 higher, if just for XP gain. But that is a very, very rough guesstimate, and is not accurate, so take it with several grains of salt. In-house, we have a lot of math that goes into how we calculate CR. That is not something I can explain here on account of it gets crunchy.
Well, Cassius, I hope that helps. We actually got a question in for our awesome producer, Lauren. It says, question, did you have any game experience with the deck before working on the book? And if so, was there something you wanted to do / work on because of that experience?
I didn't actually have a lot of experience with the deck prior to working on this book. Like, I had heard stories about the deck. I had used it in charity games, and I think I had the first time I had drawn from the deck, I had no clue what was going on. I got really lucky. It's a very fun story of like the only bad card I drew was the rogue card, and it was the second to last session of play, so it worked out.
Yeah.
But like it just my character was a bit of a nihilist at that point, and then just drew the cards and went, oh, maybe fate doesn't hate me, and then like had incredible confidence for the next couple of sessions. It was great. But that was really my only experience. So I kind of went in with this fresh perspective on the deck. Like I didn't have a lot of bad memories or good memories tied to it. In fact, it was like kind of the thing where it's like I had experienced the one experience I had was the experience of the deck being not benevolent, but like the way that it alters stories in both not just a mechanical way, but in a character way, in a role-playing way. And that was the thing I really wanted to capture, this idea of the deck as not good nor bad, just a tool for characters to kind of take matters into their own hands or rewrite their story or let fate take hold. And that idea of the deck not having morality, because a lot of people like conflate the deck being chaotic with it being bad. And that's not true. The deck is chaotic by many senses of the word, but it is not moral in any way, shape, or form. It can be used for good or for evil, but ultimately the situation you make of it, the deck gives you situations, and it's up to you as the characters and the players to do the best you can to make something meaningful out of it. And so I kind of approached it with that aspect of not feeling like the deck is antagonizing me, but wanting to help the deck and nurture the deck.
I like that. It's not quite a force of nature, it's a force of fate. I like
Yep.
that.
One of those things where it's like, to me, the deck is just this, it's an object that's cool. I don't view it as campaign breaking because it certainly didn't break my campaign when I drew 3 cards from it when I didn't know what was happening. Um, and I think it can be a really fun Magic item when given the correct support, in both a character development way and just a general kind of fun DM way. And so wanting to build a book that kind of supported that idea and brought the deck into this more, instead of a loathed and infamous item, this more kind of, oh, you can use it for a multitude of things. It doesn't
Yeah.
just cause maddening chaos or angering chaos.
I will say though, over the course of this conversation, it has made me think about like it'd be kind of fun to start a campaign at level 1 and have through some situation the party pull from the deck of many things is like, let's find out what this campaign's going to be.
Yeah, no, totally valid. I know, what is it? One of the campaigns I'm a player in, the DM loves the deck of many things and actually had the entire, like, basically it was a goal for the entire campaign that we would draw every card from the deck of many things. And we did.
That's awesome.
We drew every card.
That's so cool. I love that. Unfortunately, we got to start wrapping things up because we've got another show coming up after this. But Makenzie, thank you so much for taking time today to talk with me. This was so much fun.
This was amazing. Thank you so much for having me.
If people want to find you and what you do on the interwebs, where can they do so?
You can find me over on pretty much every social media site at Makenzie Lane DA. That is MakenziELaneda. I am on the site formerly known as Twitter. I am on Blue Sky. I am on TikTok. I am on Instagram. I am everywhere with that handle. And if I am semi-active, I'll do a lot of just like lurking on various social medias, but occasionally I will post fun announcements about like books I'm working on or shows that I'm appearing on, like this one. I'll also post other fun bits and bobs here and there, so feel free to check me out there. And I'm working on a bunch of cool stuff that I can't talk about because that it be the way of the NDA.
Yes.
But when I am finally able to talk about them, I will shout them loud and proud over there. You can also check me out in a handful of videos over on the D&D YouTube channel, where I talk about the cool stuff that I'm making and the cool adventures I've written and the monsters I've created and all that fun stuff. So if you liked me talking about things like the champions, or pulling back the curtain on how we build monsters and the design thought process behind a lot of them, you can check out those videos over there, and I get to talk a whole lot more about them.
Heck yeah. And speaking of things that you can talk about, you can go get the Book of Many Things right now at your local game store, and you can pre-order of Vecna Eve of Ruin, because that is coming out, and that is going to be fun.
I'm so excited for the videos for that to come out, because they revealed some of the art of the monsters I got to create, and I can't share the information of the terrible things they can do, but it's so good. I'm so excited. I love designing. We got to design high-level monsters for a high-level campaign, and it's awesome.
Well, definitely look forward to that. But that was going to do it for this week's episode of Idle Insights. Thank you again, Makenzie, for taking the time to talk with me today. So until next week, folks, take care of yourself.